Energy Talks. Energy Talks.
Here we go. Welcome
Yeah.
to our new podcast show. I'm Mika Tienhara, one of your hosts, and together
I'm
with
David Phillips, based in London.
yes, I could say I'm in you, kind of a bit exposed there with, let's say, it's maybe not London, but in UK with your painting there
Yes,
in the background. I'm based in
exactly,
Oslo.
exactly.
It's not Oslo in the background here, but anyhow, it's
Yes,
we run this over Teams. So our energy talks, and
excellent.
maybe we want to present ourselves shortly. David, do you want to go first from
Yeah,
your
why not?
side? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, the nice picture behind me is Oxford from the 19th century. I did go there to study, but not in the 19th century. So, I'm not in the actual picture itself. But it's a nice picture of the Oxford High Street. But I'm based in London. About 20 years running around the financial world looking at energy. 5 fantastic years in carbon capture with Arca and also with Svante. And I'm now working with, amongst other people, the Oxford Institute for Energy Studies. So actually, back to writing stuff again, back to writing some good content, hopefully, and looking at the low carbon and carbon management space.
Fantastic. And I'm Mika Tienhara, based in Oslo. The painting in my background is not Oslo, as said, but it's an inspiration to, let's say, our topic of today. I've been in the energy space for, I think it is 20 years, and I've been in automotive too before that. But it's always been about energy efficiency, process systems, processing technology, etc. So have a background from various companies, both corporates and a variety of startup scale-ups. And today I have a role in Technip Energies, but of course anything I express or share here with my views are my private ones. I've been a podcaster for 5 years, but that's more, let's say, only audio. And it's been a learning curve there too. But of course, now we are, that I'm doing alone. Now we have, it's you and me, David. And we've had
Absolutely.
these energizing
Double time.
energy talks, let's say privately already many times. And I
Yes.
so much enjoy your company. So
Yeah, likewise.
suddenly,
Well, hopefully the energy is not just in the title, but also in the way we act as well. So let's see.
let's see.
Yes,
That's going to be the verdict of, let's say, our audience, and
yeah,
we welcome any feedback and comments and any topics we could jump into. And of course, you and me, we both, let's say, have been spending a lot of time in the CCUS value chain over the past few years.
hmm
Even on let's say competing sides, but also collaborating. And of course, the
absolutely.
industry is still nascent, and a lot of collaboration is required. So we have, let's say, we're going to run through our program today. And in Energy Talks, the first section will be the news served by you, David, the fish and chips.
Fish and chips, fish and chips. The news brought to you by David Phillips.
Exactly. What it will be in tomorrow's fish and chips paper. Exactly. Well, we tried to look back a little bit on the last month, or maybe the last, let's say, 4 or 5 weeks, given things do happen over the end of the year as well. It was quite a mixed bag, actually. And Mika, you and I have discussed artists before, and we had this idea, if you had to pick an artist, modern or traditional, what artist would describe the character of the news from the last month. And I think my thought initially, in very quick reaction, it was Jackson Pollock, the famous action painting. So the news has been extremely busy. Lots of data points, lots of comments, lots of policy news. But really, I would say it's quite hard to see the theme. It's quite hard to see the obvious story behind it if there's one single thing. And also a bit like some of the artists like Jackson Pollock, also very high activity, but I bet most people can't see what's going on. So there's a lacking the eye of the beholder, as they say in that area. But which looked across it and try to get some of the themes out of this Jackson Pollock image that was January. And I think a few things. firstly, I would say the big headlines. CBAM started in Europe, so that created a lot of debate around that. Microsoft already making some CDR headlines in 2026 already. So the big buyer is also active this year, which is of course super important for CDRs and everything else. And a lot of articles of the sort of rear view mirror variety, looking back into 2025. I won't go through these now, but do have a look. There's lots of really good write-ups of CDR, especially volumes, who's been buying, what's going on, and also you have some of the ones that maybe are less positive, but a lot of rear view mirror stories. And I think also in the policy noise across the board, maybe what's new, I think Canada increasingly forward leaning, supporting CCS. Abu Dhabi coming out quite recently with some policy support. Middle East in general, more noise from Asia. So quite a lot of good stories there. You can't avoid data centers. So some good stories around can carbon capture solve the emissions around data centers, and can AI help new tech, and can AI help optimize networks for, let's say, balancing storage versus utilization versus etc. One article I really liked actually was just sort of put out three questions. Is this the year that ... And one was, is this the year we finally see some support for value chain alignment? And the other one was, is this the year you really see some returns on this whole idea to lower cost and see cost reduction? And that could be something we can discuss. I think we probably have some maybe good views on that. And also, lastly, is this the year the EU or other countries really sort out the heavy industry commitment to bring in CCS in balancing the whole capture versus storage and so on? So a lot going on there. I think one bit I thought was very encouraging, actually. A lot of noise from transport and storage. Pipe 58 and Progressive Energy. A lot of noise around cross-border. Some collaborations with UK and EU port operators and so on. So there's really good, I would say, individual efforts going on across that whole TNS thing. You have money, finance, the bit that supposedly gets everything up and running. Clean tech funding was down last year, but still pretty sizable. I think what caught my eye as a previous chemist from many years ago, just seeing the direction of the funding, a lot of interest in resilience, adaptation, let's say anything that can reuse the CO2, those areas were getting some good support, and maybe at the earlier technology end. The Netherlands issued its first ever carbon capture and storage bond just very recently, 50 million euros. It's a fantastic start. In the big end, areas like geothermal and battery storage raised a lot of money. I mean, geothermal raised, I think one company in the US looking to IPO raised almost $500 million recently. Switzerland company raised over 200 million. So there's some big dollars flying around. The money's there. It's just a matter of finding the right direction. Also, some funds looking at clean energy in Africa. More specialized funds looking at maybe power generation, solar, electrifying transport, but that's becoming the next big bit. And I think the last bit in finance is just very recently, actually, we've seen some good examples of the corporate partners, the emitters, getting involved with the technology. So Holcim getting involved in helping to fund Capsol, VASI and Capture collaborating and so on. So we're seeing some very good value chain links. Technology wise, I would say, having been a chemist a long time ago, it's nice to be a chemist because I almost understand what's going on, almost. And there's lots of interesting pathways people are looking to rediscover, to redesign, make cheaper, CO2 between chemicals. India has a big push on biomanufacturing. UPM in Finland in pulp and paper looking to make sugars from wood. A lot of electrochemistry. So there's a lot of interesting stuff going on. It's not absolutely not an open door to go too far. I mean, there's still this challenge around the green premium and all these nice products. How far will they actually move in the next few years when the end markets are so immature? One more other thing, new acronym, PICC. This is pressure-induced carbon capture. It was water-based capture. And this was one that I would say the way they describe it is industrial size fizzy water, which I'm sure is not the way that the engineers describe it. But anyway, but that's supposed to be, again, how do you solve this whole process to make it cheaper to run? It was a good headline and it grabbed my attention. And this is actually the last section for the fish and chips bit, is who won the headlines in the last few weeks. So one was this PICC, pressure-induced water, blah, 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 blah. I was like, oh, that's quite interesting. Another one was how Wales vodka and volcanic ice blocks could soon solve the carbon crisis. I love the title. I'd read the article. I still can't quite see how the article relates to the title, but it was a really good title. It was a nice story. It was supportive, so I was happy. The other one was Pigu's advice and Sisyphus's warning, carbon pricing with non-permanent CO2 removal. It sounded a bit academic. It is an academic style paper from an economist, a famous economist in Germany. I realized after reading it, I actually sat in his lecture the day before. So maybe I didn't pay full attention. I should have actually spotted it very early on, but a great, great title. And the last one was just speed reading. And the story was Company X buys Company Y's CCS business for $10.5 billion. I'm like, wow, this is firstly, I never heard of Company X doing CCS. 10 billion, and that's our industry is young. That's a big number. It's not carbon capture, it's connectivity and cable solutions. It's something in the tech world. And sure enough, in the tech world, 10 billion is pockets change. So it was, I was probably the only person who had read that out of interest. Everyone else ignored it. But anyway, there we go. But very, very busy month. Some really exciting stories in that, actually. But, Jackson Pollock, it was all over the place.
The Creative Corner.
The Jackson Pollock month. Okay, but hey, thank you, David, for delivering so many fish and chips news as such, and a few comments. I mean, you have to be careful with those acronyms. What do they stand for? Because the same things can be used differently or for different uses. So acronyms doesn't solve our energy transition, but it's a part of it in a sense. And your headlines, I love it. I have to check something just to contribute to that too. I found one from Energy Newsbeat. They have the transition to net zero is a tax on the air you breathe. Yeah. Okay, fantastic. But what I think, I mean, a few comments.
I must admit, I quite enjoy the headlines actually, Mika, because I mean, in my previous life as a financial analyst, writing research and stuff, and that's research with a small r, by the way, in the financial world, and it was all about being an entertainer and trying to get someone to read your stuff. So we were all about trying to find, and it wasn't always successful, wasn't always easy, but trying to find good headlines that would catch people's attention. I think my worst ever one, which is you have to be of a certain age to recognize the music group reference. But I wrote a big report on the seismic industry, and I called it Echo and the Money Men, which was awful. And I think in certain countries it works. Other ones is like, what is this idiot writing about? But I did get a lot of grief from my UK colleagues and clients for that one.
Understand. Okay, you learn. You learned from a lesson there too, probably.
Yes, I did.
Yeah. So interesting what you mentioned. Let's say with it was two things I was thinking about. You said clean tech investments went down last year, and I just checked that the clean tech 100 list. I mean that recently came out also in this month.
Yes.
So out of almost 25,000 nominations, it got down to 100. 48 of them are listings for the first time on that list. And almost half of these 100 are actually from the United States. Maybe a bit surprising. And I looked a bit on the segments. 32 from energy and power, 32 materials and chemicals, 18 in waste and recycling. And there's a lot of subcategories. But what amazes me, I mean, of course, residing in the Nordics, which is, let's say, innovation boiler. There's a lot happening here, and you know the Nordics yourself. There were only 6 Nordic companies on this list, and it was and represented only by Sweden and Finland. So if you look at the nations or the countries' global rating on innovation, in top 10 you have Sweden, Finland, and Denmark, and I think it's a bit underrepresented in this and this listing. And
It's
when we talk
interesting
about energy,
yeah,
where's
it's interesting, 'cause
Norway?
the academic skills are fantastic. I mean, DTU, NTNU up in Trondheim, they're across the Nordics. There are some fantastic technical universities that generate a lot of fantastic output, both particularly along certain lines of CCS and also across the transition space. So it's it's a bit surprising. Maybe it just reflects where the money chases and the corporate structures. I mean, do the innovations end up within a corporate venture arm and you never really see them, let's say register on some of these scores? I don't know.
Or maybe we are not that good at, let's say, marketing in a
Yeah,
sense.
could be.
So I think that's, and of course, having worked globally, and of course, I what we take for a given is something that you could pitch better, really,
absolutely.
from a Nordics aspect. But also what it condensed to, making a summary of a summary to a summary to boiling it down to a few words. I mean, it was like the headwinds are with hydrogen and direct air capture, definitely. And where there's a push for more is really, let's say, I think you touch upon it, the AI data centers and to secure grid and the base load and all related to it. AI is flavoring every part of our value chains, and it will continue to do so.
Oh yeah, you're right. I mean, one other example, I won't name the company, but a company that's done a lot of work, very forward-leaning in being a developer in the pulp and paper space in North America, looking to link up the whole pulp and paper, carbon capture, storage value chain, and generate some high quality permanent removals. They, having had a very close focus on pulp and paper, are now also looking towards the whole sort of gas-fired power and data center story as well. So it's a huge number, and I think it's like one topic we'll probably come back to, if not today, in future podcasts and discussions, is the whole law of numbers. And when you look at, you say Cleantech 100, or you look at Cleantech funding, or you look at CCS projects, a lot of the numbers are relatively small versus the big numbers that fly around in big industry and big economics. And it's easy to get 50% differences one year to the next and make a big story out of it, and it doesn't really mean too much. You have to look at the big scale, and the amount of the billions that are being talked about in this, what people would say maybe is an early phase of the data center build out, are so much bigger than the numbers we normally play around with carbon capture. It just gets a little bit lost in the noise somewhere. But anyway, interesting stuff.
No, but of course, let's say with my network and people I talk to, let's say in terms of founders, venture capital, etc. I mean, it's really like you mentioned in some of your fish and chips there, that let's say it's about those who are in the phase of, let's say, scaling up. Early phase is kind of not really the appetite. It's not on your plate of fish and chips. It's really the later phases are
on this phase thing. One story or one description I really liked was I think someone talked about it like going through education. So the kindergarten is really busy, and it's quite not easy is the wrong phrase. It is quite possible to get a place in the kindergarten, to find someone who will invest a few million in your very promising, possibly scalable, possibly low cost, possibly sustainability driven early tech story. Going from kindergarten to middle school is more challenging, and going from middle school to senior school is very challenging, and then graduating to actually doing a real project that's where the capital is really difficult to find. So kindergarten easy, graduating difficult. I'm glad I've graduated already.
But of course, working in business and let's say the graduation is done. But of course, let's say I looked up another report, really good. Let's say the Shell Energy Security Outlook, which came out in January, and I think it reverberates very much the same sentiments. AI is everywhere. Electrification will be ongoing. We have a mix of energy. Everything is needed. We get, the geopolitics of today makes it also difficult to navigate, for sure. But so it's an interesting but challenging environment as such for anything with the energy transition and energy. But I'm hopeful. I think there's
absolutely.
There's a good mix in this Jackson Pollock month to work further on. Definitely. So that's great. Well, should we move on then, David? From
Yeah,
So
fish
we
and
have
chips to
the circus.
The circus! The circus! A snapshot on events and conferences.
yes, exactly.
And
You've been to quite a few things, haven't you? You've been pretty. I haven't had. I think you've definitely done a lot more conversing airtime than I have had in the last few weeks. So you've been to Oslo and elsewhere in Europe, I think.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I mean, last year I didn't go to many events or conferences. I didn't have time, too busy on the business side.
Real work.
Yes. A lot of work. But anyhow, I had the intention to go to many, or some of the key ones, but then my agenda's messed up. But so January has actually been very busy in that sense. And of course, we have some key events in Oslo. So I have recently been to, let's say, there was the Climate also arranged National CCS
yes.
Cluster Gathering here in Oslo. And we had also the, let's say, Energy Department representatives there. So also, let's say, the government voice. And that's a good, the public-private dialogue in Norway is very good. It's easy to access also the authorities. Probably comes with the flat structure and transparency and trust between all citizens and the authorities as such, which is still on a fairly high level. So I think we had some, let's say, it was a good gathering with some mini workshops, and like you mentioned, the transport and storage needs to further evolve, and it's also necessary with further collaboration in the whole value chain to become even, let's say, to mature and to build this competitive market as such. It can't stand by itself. It's still needing the support from the authorities in various ways. I mean, permitting, regulations, etc. Takes time, and it's not straightforward.
It's
How
good
can
to
we
see.
accelerate?
I mean, maybe we saw a little bit of this last year as well. Maybe quite a lot of this last year. But this collaboration thing, you're right. It's so important because everyone knows that the industry does need support, but there's not a bottomless pit of money that anyone, especially in Europe, is UK, Europe, Nordics, maybe with a few exceptions. There really isn't anyone with a bottomless pit to fund this stuff long term. So the sooner it moves to some model that is nearer being self-sustaining, the better.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And of course, it is not a market or functioning market if you said, help us, we need subsidies over time.
Exactly.
It is just to kind of enable it, get it started. It has to kind of go away. We have to, we all know that it has to move away from it, but still there's a need for certain support not to skew the competition, but to, let's say, ensure
I think it's interesting. I think this point always intrigues me. I think when you think of the VC side, let's say the venture money that supports some of the newer companies in our world, I think the fact that there is this political subsidy slice in the support or financial model does make some people nervous, especially as you mentioned earlier, given some of the political uncertainty we've seen this year and in the last year or so, 18 months. And if your uncertainty is around how can I guesstimate, because it is guesstimating, what the market for a sustainably made chemical product might be, or a recycled plastic or something else like that, that's one thing. But to guesstimate around political direction can be quite scary. I think then certainly what's happening in the US has changed a few people's risk profiles, to put it politely.
I mean, it was mentioned in the Shell report. I just mentioned that.
Yes.
I mean, as a corporate, as governments, we have to also, let's say, include the geopolitical risks and fragmentation, etc. ongoing, and it's not really predictable, but you have to kind of stay alert and take heights for it as such. So moving on, the other main event I've been to was the Tekna CO2 conference, also held over 2 days in Oslo. And I think we briefly touched upon that recently. I talked with some others. I mean, so what are the sentiments? Of course, like the Longship is up and running, the value chain there. Then, of course, there were also examples of how you are not part of, let's say, some government-supported value chain project, like Carbon Centric up and running with their CCU project with very limited governmental subsidies or grants. Fantastic showcase. Inherit going to ship or truck transport CO2 to Northern Lights. But of course, those two are two examples of small emitters where there is not still a functioning, let's say, TNS in that sense. How do we enable these small emitters? And I think that is back to the climate national cluster gathering as well as Tekna. There is a need for, let's say, evolve on the transportation side. Maybe there definitely is a need for some kind of collection hubs, general terminals. Look at Denmark with the challenges of their CCUS round or CCS round as such. That do you compete for infrastructure when that might be a necessity to share? So I mean it's a learning. Curve.
But I think it's there's a big opportunity with some of the smaller emitters actually. I mean, just because the absolute dollar or euro or krona amounts, depending where you sit, or even sterling amounts, it's an easier job to link things up, and you can get a lot of credibility to show how a whole network and our whole value chain works, because you can achieve it with a lower sum of money. Now, okay, you're not having the same impact on the climate, of course you're not, but to show how it can be done, as you said, with Carbon Centric in Norway. And I in my previous employer had a great success with Twente in the Netherlands on that 100,000 ton modular unit on waste to energy. It's a very that end is very impactful, and you can get some good examples and say, look, this is really how it can be done, and don't just have to wait until someone is prepared to invest billions in a huge
exactly.
project somewhere.
But both those examples showcase, let's say, for a lesser investment, and you can let's say get it up and running rather quickly, and it works. And like you say, we have to simplify, we have to standardize to get there. I mean, because it's all about, let's say, making projects feasible or bankable and able to take an FID, the final investment decision.
We do one very small scale example, but just as a more almost like a mini business school sort of study to see how people work. Look at the brewing and winery industry. They have a CO2 network, as it happens. They need it for certain jobs. They obviously create it from fermentation. They have issues around supply in the last few years in terms of lack of CO2 supply, sometimes cost issues and input costs and so on. And they're increasingly. It probably is quite a regional business, to be honest, but they're recently doing quite some work around how can they share this whole CO2 capture story into a network where, I mean, these numbers are smaller. There's you're a fact order of magnitude smaller than a big cement plant, but still you can show with a certain amount of CO2 you capture it, and you can liquefy it, you can move it around, you can sell it to someone who needs it, or you can maybe get involved in some sort of small storage cluster as a smaller member of a storage cluster and create some removals because it's all biogenic. And yes, the numbers are small, but you can show on a nice model this is how you link it up, and I think there's some quite good lessons learned from that. And I don't just mean an excuse to hang around wineries and breweries, which is also a very good reason to look at this.
It's not bad. It's not bad. But I mean, it's part of, let's say, just showcasing carbon to something. We need exactly. Carbon is, let's say, not everyone agrees. Okay, carbon is or CO2 is waste. It should be stored, but maybe it can be anyhow utilized as such for other purposes. But let's say, also want to highlight that, of course, there was this when I mentioned Denmark, there was this. Nordic CCUS gathering, but it's also the same sentiments. More collaboration. Yes. We have certain things up and running. We need to go for the scalability. We need to get the hard to abate industries on board, or big industrial companies and CDRs also get, let's say, how do we make this a functioning market with those voluntary, let's say the carbon credits as such, not just to have one big company, but
Yes.
let's see. It's
Exactly.
there should be hope as such.
Yeah. No, I think I've got. I think the next time we do this in a month's time, I should have some good event feedback, and I've got quite a good few things coming up. I mean, there's my friends at the Oxford Institute of Energy Studies, OIES, have one of their big carbon management events in early February in Oxford. I got what else? I'll go to the. I get the name right here. The 7th UK CCUS and hydrogen something summit. It's quite a mouthful, but anyway, I'm going to be part of that. Very thanks to the organisers. So that should be a good measure of what's going on in over here. The last few weeks I haven't done much apart from the lecture in Oxford I went to around carbon removals, and this is the one linked to that title that I failed to spot, the Sisyphus related title around CDR. And it was I'm actually quite enjoying having time now to listen to some of the more economic models that are proposed as long-term solutions to make to much of what we were saying earlier. How can we really continue the growth as you move away from the heavy government subsidy phase? And obviously the CDR market will have a link to compliance market integration, to CBAM, to everything else. And this particular one was around carbon debt. How can you create a carbon debt instrument that allows someone to issue these instruments and effectively commit to pay later, to do some removals later, but it bridges the gap, and it's looking at it's filling a phase of exploiting the temporal gap, which I love these academic titles that sound so clever. It's like books with clever titles you can read on planes to look smart or to try and look smart. But it's the temporal gap. How do you bridge the next 3, 5, 10 years when maybe the volume is a bit lumpy in proper long-term removal deals? And if you have this type of let's say removal emission obligation, maybe that can blend in and add liquidity to the market to smooth it out. But some very, very interesting ideas, but very, very academic discussion, but some quite good economics to think about. But other than that, I look forward next month to telling you all about the UK temperature. So
fantastic. I'm much looking forward to that. And I think, we all have to be patient. The transformations, industrial and system shifts take time.
Yes. Exactly.
It's a new phase of industrial revolution, so we will continue to explore that in the coming months and episodes as such. So, I think this has been a great first conversation, David, and hopefully we can learn something from it also and move forward. And of course, from our audience, we're happy to get any questions or comments, and hopefully also some relevant feedback, if so. But and also what we could tap into, and if this kind of sparks some ideas from anyone who's watching and listening to this.
I'm always interested in that sort of both the emerging ideas and also, let's say, good themes for the year. Are there themes that people think are missed out? Are there big topics that you just don't hear discussed in the big events and big articles you read so far? Because there were so many topics to discuss in this, and some of them maybe I would think confuse timelines and numbers. So it's easy to be very positive or very negative, and until you look at some of the actual details, realize comparing like with like and so on. But I think there are some very, very good discussions in this industry, and love to hear any angles you think that really should be in focus now.
Fantastic. Thank you for this time. Thank you for watching and listening to the Energy Talks by David and myself. I'm Mika Tianara.
Well, I'm David Phillips. Thank you very much. Excellent.
Energy Talks.